So in this collectivist version of meth, how do songs come together? Do you guys write in a room together, or do you trade files back and forth?
It's a combination. When I joined the band, we were, I think, maybe a couple songs into the writing of this record, and
Yeah,
yeah, I think we had maybe had like a couple songs, and for the most part, it was usually Zach coming through. And for this record, I think his approach, and I mean, I don't want to misspeak for him, but he had mentioned one time he was a little bit more interested about textures on this record rather than riffs. And so it would be him kind of fooling around with whatever sort of HM2, dirt pedal, whatever, and just trying to make the nastiest sounding tones that he could, and then trying to write as, apocalyptic, scary, gross sounding sort of riffs or sounds that it could, and then sort of building around that idea. I think there's a few songs on this record that are really just kind of born around a guitar sound more so than like a melody or like a motif or something like that.
yeah. I feel like the perfect example of that on the record is the first song, "Doubt,"
Yeah, doubt.
and just kind of. I mean, we had always wanted to try to write like a song that was just one riff, like, or not even a riff. I mean, that's just like one chord.
Just a note. Yeah, just one chord.
Yeah,
And just kind of pummeling it into you.
yeah, and just trying to figure out how far we can take one chord, and that song just over and over and over, and it just kind of exactly like what you were saying, Nate. It's just like we're trying to pummel the listener and
Yeah.
get as much life as we can out of just the most simple idea, and seeing kind of where it takes us. And I think a lot of that too, a lot of this record too, is just really just taking the ideas that we had to and just really exploring where they could take and like where they naturally wanted to go, like,
Yeah.
and not necessarily like putting too much emphasis on things that like we wanted to do individually as musicians or something, or like just trying to strip away a lot of just being like, oh, we want to write like a chaotic, like grindy song, so we're going to jump in and like try to force that into everything. And it was very much Zach kind of would have a riff, record it. He would do he would program drums off of Easy Drummer, and then just kind of like record his guitar parts and do like a general bass part over it, and just like send us his ideas. And then we kind of would collectively like pick things apart, and then they would get together a lot of the time and really just also try to orchestrate everything too. I feel like Andrew had a lot of that. Just
There's a lot of movement in what Andrew does. Andrew carries a lot of the songs because
Mhm.
whereas we might be playing something like very restrained as rhythm or note choices, he kind of has to pick up the energy and sort of carry it. I think Shame is a really good example of that.
Mhm.
The sort of title track to the album, a lot of the verses, the drums really kind of drive the whole sound. And I think for me personally, as the playing bass on the record, restraint was kind of the name of the game for me, and I think it was for a lot of us. I don't necessarily think so for the vocals, because once again, the vocals and the drums kind of carry a lot of things, but for the rest of us, it was like restraint. How much can we pummel you with one note rather than a million notes? Because playing a million notes is really fun and is challenging in its own way, but having a little bit of restraint makes the louder, more chaotic parts of this record almost hit a little bit harder, in my opinion.
So the album that we're talking about is called Shame, and as we're having this conversation, it'll be released at the end of the week through Prosthetic Records. We spoke a little bit about how this album is more pummeling and maybe less riffy, maybe more of an atmospheric experience. I'm curious if you guys went into this album wanting to do something different from the kind of mathcore or chaotic hardcore stuff that you guys were doing previously.
Oh yeah, we definitely, I don't want to say like we intentionally were like we just really want to get away from that, because it's not necessarily like we wanted to get away from it, but I think we just really wanted to kind of just expand on the sound and write something that felt different, write something that felt new, but still felt very like what meth is, and just can kind of be more reflective of just where we're progressing. I think really any of us are apt to wanting to write something that even kind of gets a little bit too close to a record sounding like we're writing the same thing twice in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of the way that we jumped into this too, it was a lot of kind of trying to like do a lot of personal challenges, like Nate was talking about, with just kind of taking a step back and trying to dial back like the riffiness of it, and Zach really wanting to experiment with textures. And I remember him like saying a lot of the times, like when we were writing the record and everything, he was just like, yeah, I want no riffs on this record. And just really hammering in that it was just like, it needs to be gritty and it needs to like feel this way. And I know for me vocally in a lot of ways too, it was very, I felt like on Mother of Red Light, I didn't shut the fuck up in a lot of aspects of it. And I was just like, I want to dial it back and explore my vocal dynamic in different ways as well. So it was very much trying to incorporate more lows or a little bit more of like cleaner sounding vocals. I mean, I think when we initially started this record, I went into it thinking I wasn't going to be screaming. And then as we were writing the songs, it's like, no, these songs completely require harsh vocals, and I'm not going to just sit here and be like, no, it has to be this way. Like, and I think that, I mean, it was just for the better. Like, and I feel like vocally I got to try a lot of things and show a lot more range than I have in previous records that we've done and everything as well. And I just think collectively we all like restricted ourselves in different ways, but I feel like it also just made us just better as players and writers and everything, and just kind of helped us just branch out of our comfort zone in a lot of different ways. And I always kind of feel like that's the biggest goal of just what we want to get out of it as writers for like records and everything, and just really trying to find something new and scratch those new itches, and finding different ways to like test yourself and like, what can I do that isn't just running through like the motions? And if as soon as we start feeling like we're running through the motions, it's like we need to kind of take a step back and recalibrate and see what's going on.
Like being in a band and like creating art is too much of a sacrifice at this point to do it without pushing yourself and getting growth and getting, feeling like you're accomplishing something. It's to go through the motions and just kind of make the same thing over again. There's too much sacrifice. There's too much you have to put into it to not want to get the absolute most you can out of it.
I also feel like we took I feel like when we went into writing, like Nate, you weren't in the band at this time, but I feel like you can attest to like the attitude shift within the band in a lot of ways too. Cause I felt like when we were going into writing Mother of Red Light, it was very like, I felt like we took things like too seriously because it was our first record, and we like really wanted to establish ourselves just as what we were at that time. And like, I just felt like that recording process compared to this one was extremely grueling, whereas like I feel the whole band has really like lightened up, and we've just gotten a lot more comfortable with each other. And
this one was great.
Yeah, this one was super great. And it's just like, I just feel like the chemistry has just been off the charts with everything too. And that's been like a huge factor, is just like, not that there was like issues or anything prior. It's just like, I just feel like the five of us just really click, and we all can kind of just like read each other in a lot of really just good ways. And I mean, especially live too. Like, I mean, Nate, like when we first started playing together, and like when he, like his first shows with the band, like I usually like trying to just be all over the place, or I'm just kind of going wherever I'm just feeling like going in the moment. And it was like the second or third show that we had played like back together, but Nate like beat the shit out of me on stage. And it was like one of my favorite things ever, because like I was just like on my knees at one point, and all of a sudden there's just like a boot to my chest, and I was like, whoa. Like no, like no one ever like hits me or like invades my space, and I was like, I love this. Like it's just like everyone's feeling comfortable, and it's just like it was like, honestly, weirdly, it was like when we started getting to that point of everything, that's when everything started really, really feeling like really, really good, like that the band was in like a really tight and good place.
I want the record to show that the band got way better after I started kicking Seb on stage.
Yeah, well, because we knew we're like, dude, we gotta step up, or Nate's gonna like kick the shit out of us.
I gave Mike one night, and he wasn't so thrilled about it. He was.
Oh, yeah. I remember.
I'm just waiting for the mic to come swinging on stage left one of these nights, and for me to get my just desserts, as I know it's coming. I'm just waiting.
Yeah, I've been plotting.
I'm a metalhead who loves hardcore, and it was always funny to me to go back and forth between the two scenes. This is a huge digression. I apologize, but
go for it.
Oh no,
the thought just occurred to me. It was always funny to go back and forth between the two scenes, where one was very precious about playing every note perfectly, and the other was, you never really knew what was going to happen in terms of like, the singer jumping off the stage and maybe there wouldn't be anyone there to catch them. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes 3 or 4 guitar strings would break and the band would keep going. I'm curious, Nate, on your side, where the physicality of the performance and interacting with the band members, and I'm assuming the audience gets a little bit as well, where that comes from.
Yeah, I try to just give it to Seb. No, but I grew up more into the like punk and hardcore thing. I've gotten much more into metal as I've gotten older. Like in the recent probably 5 years, I've been, there was like a lot of toilet music that I kind of like shunned and, like shied away from when I was a kid. And then here I am at like 31 years old, like looking up old Torso Fuck videos, like, oh, cool. This is a little bit of I should have just gone to therapy, but for me back in the day, it was like, that was what I kind of latched onto, where a band like Gallows, which is not a band that's, I would say, particularly heavy, but they were a band where none of them were pretty. They couldn't sing very well or play their instruments very well, but they would sort of get into the audience and beat themselves up and play as fucking hard as possible. And I always look to that, or bands like Black Flag, where they're bleeding and exhausted by the end of it. And I feel like if you're not giving everything you have, why are you doing it? And I get that when you're playing in more technical metal bands, it's not probably great to bludgeon yourself when you've got, another 2 weeks of tour and you can't pull off, your, technical sort of riffs or parts anymore, or, stuff like that. It doesn't work for everything, but I feel like a band like Meth relies so heavily on us giving everything we have, and I mean, Seb is not to get real weird on him, but Seb's like a absolutely S-tier performer. I mean, he literally gets on stage and bleeds every night. So I'm just trying to give as much as I can to try to match him. And I think that we're all on that level of like, we need to try to match Seb, because if Seb is giving everything he has every night, who am I to say, no, you go for it. I'll just play the bass over here. No.
And when we say Seb bleeds on stage, you mean that quite literally, right? Like I've seen photos with Seb. You look like you got cut open by the mic stand or something like that.
Yeah, it turned into a thing. I don't even remember when it like actually started, but I mean it definitely it stems a lot from like blading and like wrestling and stuff, but like also it has like that weird like that therapeutic aspect to everything. And like I've just always, like, similar to Nate, like talking about Gallows and everything, and it was just like I've always like really, really heavily resonated with like the frontmen who just go out, and it's like not only is it just like giving 100% in a lot of different ways, but it's like trying to tap into something and make it a little bit more therapeutic for yourself. But then like in a lot of different ways too, it's like performing, like we're up there, we're performing and we're trying, like, to me, it's like every time we're playing like a set, I am trying to tell a story of some sort. I like of just however I'm moving during that set or just whatever like is going through. And it's just like, again, you just kind of let everything just kind of take you and you just naturally follow it. But like the blood element, it was just like, I don't know. I just felt like I needed it on that first show and it just felt really good. And it was just me bashing my head in with my like car keys that were just in my pocket.